Imagine waking up one morning, reaching for your phone, and there's nothing, no Google, no YouTube, no social media, not even email, the internet gone. Sounds like science fiction, right? Or maybe a plot from a dystopian movie. But here's the real question. Can the internet actually be turned off? In today's digital world, the internet is like oxygen, invisible yet essential. We rely on it for communication, education, finance, entertainment, and even national defense. Shutting it down entirely would be like stopping the heartbeat of modern civilization. But is it even technically possible? And if so, how? Welcome to Digital Wiz Academy, where we uncover the hidden mechanics behind the tech shaping our world. In this deep dive, we'll explore how the internet works, who controls it, whether a kill switch exists, and what happens if governments or hackers try to flip that switch. But before we can understand if the internet can be shut down, we need to answer a more basic question. What is the internet? The internet isn't a single device or central system you can simply unplug. It's a decentralized network of networks comprising millions of servers, routers, satellites, undersea cables, and devices worldwide. It runs on physical infrastructure like data centers and fiber optics, but it's governed by protocols like TCP or IP, HTTP, and DNS. No single entity owns it, and that's by design. It was built to be resilient, to survive even if parts of it are damaged or destroyed. That was the original idea behind ARPANET, the military precursor to today's internet. So, if no one owns the internet, how could anyone shut it down? Here's where things get interesting. While no single government or organization owns the internet, control points do exist. Think of internet service providers, ISPs, submarine cable landing stations, DNS root servers, and national firewalls. And yes, in some cases, a government can flip a switch, but not everywhere, not easily, and not completely. In the next segment, we'll explore how some countries have successfully pulled off internet blackouts and what tools they use to do it. Spoiler alert, it's not as straightforward as you think. As we were discussing, no one truly owns the internet. But despite its decentralized nature, control points do exist, and governments have learned how to exploit them. Let's take a look at the real-world tools governments use to restrict, block, or entirely shut down internet access, even if just temporarily. 1. Internet service providers, ISPs. The easiest choke point is the internet service provider, the companies that connect you to the internet. Governments often regulate or license ISPs, giving them legal power to force shutdowns. With a single order, access can be denied across large regions. Examples? India has ordered hundreds of local internet shutdowns using its ISPs. In Egypt 2011, during the Arab Spring, the entire internet was cut off for 5 days, with just 5 ISPs cooperating with the government. This shows that while the internet as a concept is global, your actual access to it is local and therefore vulnerable. DNS manipulation. Every website you visit goes through a domain name system, DNS, like a phone book for the web. If a government controls or blocks DNS servers, it can make websites disappear even though they're still online. China's Great Firewall often uses DNS spoofing to misdirect users or block entire platforms. Think of it like calling someone, but the operator keeps saying the number doesn't exist. Deep Packet Inspection, DPI. DPI is a high-tech surveillance and filtering tool. It allows authorities to monitor and control what kind of data is flowing through the network and even block or throttle specific types of content. This method doesn't shut off the internet entirely, but it creates a kind of digital censorship prison. The internet still works, but only in tightly controlled ways. DPI is what enables countries like Iran or North Korea to allow internal internet access while filtering or cutting off international content. Physical infrastructure control. Let's not forget the submarine cables, those massive fiber optic lines that connect continents beneath the ocean. They're fast, but also fragile. Some countries host cable landing stations or major data centers. If the government controls these, they can potentially cut off or reroute international traffic. In 2023, a few African nations experienced near-total blackouts when undersea cables were damaged and governments failed to provide backup routing. So, yes, while you can't turn off the internet globally with a single switch, you can block access regionally or even nationally if you control key choke points. But here's the twist, even the most powerful government efforts can't guarantee a total blackout because just like water, information finds a way. Even with firewalls, ISP shutdowns, and surveillance, people worldwide have found clever and often risky ways to stay connected. When communication is cut off, resistance begins. Let's explore the most powerful tools used to bypass blackouts. 1. VPNs, virtual private networks. VPNs are the first defense. They encrypt traffic and route it through servers in other countries, hiding your online activity. Governments try to block known VPNs, but newer tools adapt faster than filters. Think of a VPN as a tunnel under a censorship wall. The more tunnels, the harder it is to block them all. 2. Tor, the onion router. If VPNs are tunnels, Tor is a maze. It sends traffic through random servers worldwide, hiding both identity and destination. It's slower, but nearly impossible to trace. Tor remains a lifeline for activists and journalists under oppressive regimes. 3. Mesh networks. When infrastructure fails, people create mesh networks using phones and routers. Devices connect directly, and ISP or towers, messages hop between devices until they reach their target. Apps like BridgeFi or Briar use Bluetooth or Wi-Fi to send encrypted messages. No SIM, no internet. It's digital survival, a peer-to-peer web when the real one goes dark. 4. Satellite internet. Satellite systems like Starlink bypass ground infrastructure. When Russia invaded Ukraine, Starlink was deployed to keep people online despite destroyed cables and jamming. Satellites are harder to block but come with limits, high cost, limited availability, and visibility, which can make users a target in hostile zones. 5. Old school methods. In extreme cases, people go old school. Dial-up modems, fax machines, and shortwave radios still work in areas where modern tech is blocked. Slow, yes. But in desperate times, even analog tools are revolutionary. Shutting down the internet is just the start. Silencing people is the real goal, and that's why these tools matter. As governments try to centralize control, citizens decentralize communication. It's a high-stakes game of cat and mouse, and the mouse is getting smarter. So, what does it actually take to shut down the entire internet within a country or across the world? It's not as easy as flipping a switch, but it's also not impossible. Let's break down how it's technically done and why the structure of the internet itself makes it both vulnerable and resilient. The internet's backbone, Tier 1 providers. At the top of the internet's hierarchy are major players, Tier 1 network providers. These include companies like AT&T, Tata Communications, NTT, and Centurlink that carry most of the world's traffic. They manage global data pipelines, undersea cables, fiber lines, and key routing hubs. These backbones form the skeleton of the internet. If these Tier 1 providers were forced to shut down or reroute traffic, entire continents could be silenced, but that's unlikely. Most operate in multiple nations and are protected by international laws and redundancy systems. Routing control, the BGP protocol. The real power to block or reroute traffic lies in BGP, Border Gateway Protocol. BGP tells the internet how to move traffic. If a government or ISP alters BGP announcements, it can reroute, block, or black hole specific websites, services, or even regions. It's like telling the post office to dump your mail into a shredder. No one receives anything. This method was used during shutdowns in Pakistan, Belarus, and Myanmar, where access to platforms disappeared in minutes. Is there an internet kill switch? Globally, no. There's no single switch to turn off the internet, but within a country, yes, sometimes. Governments that control domestic infrastructure, especially via state-owned ISPs, can shut it down with a single directive. This happened in Egypt 2011, Iran 2019, and India Kashmir region. A single order disconnected tens of millions. The more centralized the infrastructure, the easier it is to silence a nation. In democratic countries with many ISPs, a full shutdown is harder, though not impossible. Undersea cables, global choke points. Here's a surprising fact: over 95% of global internet traffic travels through undersea cables. These cables, often just inches thick, span oceans and link continents. They're vulnerable physically and digitally. In 2022, a cable near France was mysteriously cut, disrupting service in multiple countries. Though backups exist, the system isn't invincible. Some choke points, like in the Red Sea or the Suez Canal, are especially at risk. So, what happens if multiple undersea cables are cut or compromised? Could the world actually go dark? The answer lies in redundancy. Major cables often have alternate routes. But in some parts of the world, that redundancy is limited or even non-existent. Take West Africa, for example. In early 2020, a dual cable failure caused severe outages across several countries. Banks, businesses, and entire infrastructures were brought to a halt for days. Let's now shift to how different governments exercise control over the internet. In North Korea, the approach is simple. Very few people even have internet access. The entire population is mostly confined to a state-controlled intranet called Kwangyong. So if they want to shut it off, they basically flip a switch. In contrast, Russia has developed a more advanced system under its sovereign internet law. They've created technology that could theoretically disconnect the Russian internet from the rest of the world and still function internally. It's like designing a sealed digital ecosystem, one that can be isolated without collapsing. China, however, has taken things even further with the famous Great Firewall. This system filters, monitors, and blocks foreign content while also promoting Chinese platforms. Total shutdown isn't their style, but control absolutely. Governments and ISPs use a set of powerful tools to manage or disable internet access. The most common are Deep Packet Inspection (DPI). This scans every packet of data traveling through the network. It can identify, filter, and block content in real time based on keywords, URLs, or traffic patterns. DNS tampering or blocking. This technique rewrites or suppresses domain name responses. In other words, even if a website exists, users are blocked from accessing it, like trying to call someone whose number was removed from the directory. These methods don't just shut down the internet, they allow targeted censorship, precise blocking, or selective shutdowns. One of the most well-known examples happened during the Arab Spring. In January 2011, the Egyptian government ordered major ISPs to shut down their services. It wasn't gradual. Within hours, nearly 90% of Egypt's internet went dark. How? By pulling BGP routes and cutting access to international internet exchange points. It was a chilling moment, a reminder that access to the internet can be revoked, even in the modern era. Who holds the power? The ability to flip the switch lies with different layers: governments, telecom companies, and tier 1 providers. In democratic nations, checks and balances often prevent such sweeping actions, though emergency laws sometimes allow it. In authoritarian regimes, shutdowns can be ordered instantly, without warning or accountability. So yes, the internet can be turned off, not globally, not easily, and not without severe consequences, but it's possible, and it's been done. As we've seen, governments can exert strong control over internet access, but they're not the only ones. There's another big threat: cyber attacks. Hackers and organized cyber groups can damage the internet's core systems without needing legal authority. One of the most famous examples, the DNS attack in 2016. The DIN attack. DIN is a DNS provider that helps direct internet traffic. On one October day, DIN was flooded with a massive DDoS attack. Millions of infected devices bombarded its servers, overwhelming them. Websites like Twitter, Reddit, Netflix, and Spotify were knocked offline across large parts of the US and Europe. It was a moment of digital paralysis. These infected devices weren't high-tech computers. They were everyday items like webcams, baby monitors, and routers, all hijacked using malware called Mirai. The takeaway? The internet can be disrupted without a single government order, just through bad cybersecurity. Big tech's power over access. Let's shift to another kind of control by corporations, not countries. Tech giants like Google, Facebook, and Amazon don't own the internet itself, but they own what we do on it. Social media, cloud storage, email, and search engines all run through their platforms. If one of these companies restricts or suspends access, it can affect millions. That's real power without any election or legal vote. In 2021, for example, Facebook blocked news content in Australia during a dispute over a law. Millions couldn't see or share news overnight. It wasn't a government act. It was a corporate decision. Can satellite internet prevent shutdowns? Many are now looking to satellite internet services like Starlink for a more open, censorship-free internet. Because it beams internet from space, it doesn't rely on undersea cables or national telecoms. Sounds unstoppable, right? Not exactly. Satellite providers still need ground stations, legal licenses, and must follow national rules. If a government doesn't approve, it can block ground connections or ban the service altogether. So while satellite internet is a step toward decentralization, it's not immune to political or technical interference. Disabling the internet isn't just a technical or political act, it's economically devastating. According to recent estimates, global internet shutdowns in 2023 caused billions in losses. A single day without access can paralyze banking, trade, education, and healthcare. For businesses that depend on cloud services, even a few hours offline can mean serious financial loss and broken trust. That's why even authoritarian governments often hesitate. The price tag is massive. This all leads to one unavoidable truth. The internet is a tool for progress and for control. On one side is the idea of a free, borderless network. On the other hand, the power to restrict, monitor, or shut it off entirely. It's not just about whether the internet can be turned off, but who decides when and why. Despite its digital nature, the internet is built on physical infrastructure. Without it, the web simply wouldn't exist. Undersea cables, these cables carry over 95% of global internet traffic. Stretching across oceans, they connect continents, but they're fragile. A single cable cut can disrupt internet access for entire regions. In 2008, damage to cables near Egypt affected millions across the Middle East and Asia. No cyber attack, just physical breakage. Ship anchors, natural disasters, and even sabotage can sever these lines. The internet's global power rests on wires buried under the sea. Data centers and exchange points. Data centers store websites, apps, and cloud services. Internet exchange points (IXPs) are where different networks connect. Disruptions to these can affect large areas. Targeting just a few key centers can cripple national connectivity. The internet's strength is also its weakness, concentration, the kill switch. Some countries have systems that can cut off internet access nationally. It's called the internet kill switch. In places like Iran, Myanmar, and North Korea, authorities have full control over ISPs. During protests or political events, they've shut down the internet to control information. When governments own or regulate ISPs, blocking access becomes a matter of flipping a switch. Centralized vs. decentralized systems. In countries with decentralized networks like the US, a full shutdown is harder. Thousands of private ISPs mean there's no single off switch. Still, governments can request or compel providers to block specific sites or services, especially during emergencies. Partial shutdowns. Instead of cutting everything, some governments block certain platforms. Social media, messaging apps, or news sites are often the first to go. These targeted actions help control public opinion while avoiding total panic. Impact on daily life. Internet shutdowns aren't just technical events, they affect real people. Education halts, businesses stop, families lose touch, hospitals may lose patient records, students can't attend online classes, online workers lose income. In a connected world, a shutdown is more than a blackout. It's a breakdown of society's digital layer. Economic consequences. Every minute offline costs money. Countries lose millions during prolonged outages. E-commerce, banking, and digital services all grind to a halt. Shutdowns hurt economies, slow growth, and create long-term instability. The damage is often deeper than it first appears. The internet isn't just about convenience, it's now a vital part of national security, emergency response, and global diplomacy. National security and the internet. Governments depend on the internet for critical communications, defense systems, and intelligence sharing, but that also makes it a target. Cyber attacks on infrastructure can cripple transportation, electricity, and finance systems, all of which rely on internet-connected networks. A deliberate takedown of internet access isn't just a technical issue, it becomes a matter of national defense. Intentional blackouts. During crises, some countries shut down access to prevent misinformation, organize military action, or stop civil unrest. India, for example, has implemented more internet shutdowns than any other country in recent years, mainly in response to political tensions or protests. The idea is to control the narrative. No internet, no social media, no momentum for organized dissent. Authoritarian control. In authoritarian regimes, internet access is tightly monitored and filtered. Shutting it down completely isn't difficult when the infrastructure is state-owned. In such places, citizens often rely on VPNs and satellite connections to bypass restrictions, but even these tools aren't always foolproof. The role of satellites. Emerging technologies like satellite internet, think Starlink, offer hope for bypassing national shutdowns. These systems provide internet access from space, independent of ground cables or local infrastructure. But they come with limitations: cost, availability, and the need for compatible devices. Satellites can offer a lifeline during a shutdown, but they're not yet a full replacement for traditional systems. Global dependencies, even localized shutdowns, can have global effects. A manufacturing delay in one country caused by a blackout can affect supply chains worldwide. Financial markets, logistics, and international trade are tightly bound to the internet. When one piece fails, the ripple spreads fast. Digital human rights. Access to the internet is increasingly viewed as a basic human right. Organizations like the United Nations argue that connectivity enables freedom of speech, education, and economic participation. When access is denied, it affects more than browsing or streaming. It silences voices, halts progress, and widens global inequality. In the modern world, cutting internet access is like cutting off electricity or water. It's a powerful tool, sometimes abused, balancing power and responsibility. The ability to control internet access can protect citizens, but it can also suppress them. Striking a balance between security and freedom is one of the defining challenges of our digital age. The real question isn't just can the internet be turned off, but who should have the power to decide? While national shutdowns grab headlines, there's another quieter threat to internet access: corporate control, centralized power in tech giants. A handful of tech companies own or control much of the infrastructure the internet depends on. Think of names like Google, Amazon, Meta, and Microsoft. From cloud storage to search engines to undersea cables, these companies hold enormous power over how we access and experience the internet. This raises a new question: what happens if one of these giants suddenly fails or is forced offline? Single points of failure. If Amazon Web Services (AWS) goes down, millions of websites and apps will crash instantly. We've seen it before: banking apps, streaming platforms, online stores, all going dark at once. This isn't just an inconvenience. It's a real vulnerability in how we've built the digital world. The fragility of DNS. The domain name system DNS is like the internet's phone book. If DNS servers go offline or are attacked, users can't reach websites, even if the servers are still running. In 2016, a massive DDoS attack on DNS provider DIN brought down Twitter, Netflix, Reddit, and Spotify across the US and Europe. One attack, global impact. The internet may feel decentralized, but key pieces are still highly concentrated. Power grids and internet dependence: no power, no internet. Even the most advanced systems need electricity. Natural disasters, grid failures, or imp attacks could cut access instantly. During major hurricanes or earthquakes, people often lose connection for days, not because of the internet itself, but because the local power supply is gone. Offline solutions. Some communities are building mesh networks, small, local networks that don't rely on central internet providers. These systems let people communicate or share data even when the main internet is down. It's not a full substitute, but it's a promising way to maintain resilience during outages or shutdowns. Internet usage monitoring. Many governments and organizations use Deep Packet Inspection (DPI) to analyze internet traffic. This can be used to restrict, throttle, or completely block certain services or types of content. While often justified as a security measure, DPI also opens the door to censorship and control. What happens after a shutdown? When the internet comes back online, the damage isn't always over. Trust may be broken, data may be lost, businesses may never fully recover. People begin to self-censor, fearing the next blackout. The internet's power depends on its availability, and when it's taken away, the psychological effects last long after the signals return. Interrupting the internet disrupts far more than devices. It shakes societies, economies, and people's confidence in their digital future. The question lingers in the background of every outage, every glitch, every blackout. What if one day the entire internet really did stop working? The global impact of a complete internet collapse: let's imagine it, not just a local shutdown or corporate failure, but a total global internet collapse. No websites, no emails, no streaming, no banking, no cloud services. It's not science fiction. The internet is built on physical systems, cables, servers, and satellites. Like any system, it can break. Billions of people would be affected instantly. Life as we know it would grind to a halt. Financial chaos. Most financial systems rely on constant internet access, banks, ATMs, and credit card processing. A complete loss would mean no online transactions, no digital banking, and likely a crash in global markets. Even simple purchases at grocery stores could become impossible as payment systems go offline. Supply chain disruption. From factory automation to international shipping, supply chains are deeply embedded in internet infrastructure. Logistics companies rely on real-time tracking, digital manifests, and smart warehousing. A prolonged outage could delay essential goods, food, medicine, and fuel, causing panic and scarcity. Communication breakdown. Without the internet, millions lose their only affordable method of communication. Video calls, emails, and messaging apps vanish. Many phone systems now route through the internet using VoIP. Emergency services would be overwhelmed. Governments could struggle to issue alerts or coordinate disaster responses. The silence wouldn't just be digital, it would be physical. Entire cities might feel disconnected, both technically and emotionally. Collapse in education and remote work. Online learning and remote jobs have become essential. An internet collapse would disrupt education for millions of students and halt work for countless employees globally. The productivity loss would be massive, especially in countries relying on digital economies. Loss of entertainment and routine. Think about how much of daily life runs through the web, YouTube, Netflix, gaming, and social media. With no internet, people would lose access to entertainment, news, and the routine interactions they've come to depend on. Boredom would be the least of the concerns. Many would feel disoriented, even psychologically distressed. Our sense of connection, our awareness of the world, even our time management, it's all tied to the internet now. Economic fallout. Companies that run online retailers, app developers, and content creators would face instant losses. Global GDP could plunge. Recovery would take months, if not years. Startups might collapse overnight. Major corporations could lose billions in valuation in a matter of days. Even if the internet were restored within hours or days, the aftershocks would ripple for weeks, months, or even years. Psychological and social effects. Beyond economics and logistics, the psychological toll would be massive. The internet is not just a tool, it's part of how we connect, learn, express, and live. For many, especially younger generations, the sudden silence would feel like isolation from the world. No updates, no messages, no way to reach out or check in. Studies show that digital disconnection, even temporary, can raise stress levels, increase anxiety, and trigger feelings of helplessness. Breakdown in social trust. When people can't access reliable information, trust breaks down. Rumors and misinformation spread faster in the absence of official updates. Social unrest can follow. In some countries, temporary blackouts have already shown these effects. Panic buying, protests, and even violence. Long-term institutional damage. Governments and tech companies would face intense criticism. People would question how such a collapse was even possible. Why wasn't the system more secure? Who's to blame? Regulatory changes would likely follow. Entire internet infrastructures might be redesigned with new rules, new oversight, and possibly more surveillance. That leads to a troubling idea. Could such a collapse become an excuse for more control? The rise of digital authoritarianism. A major global incident could open the door for stricter regulations. Governments might introduce more censorship under the guise of safety. Firewalls, content filtering, and mandatory data storage laws could become the norm in more countries. Limiting freedom while claiming to protect it calls for decentralization. At the same time, a collapse could fuel the opposite movement, decentralization. Activists and developers might push harder for peer-to-peer networks, offline tools, and open-source protocols. Decentralized web projects like IPFS or blockchain-based domains would gain momentum, offering alternatives to centralized systems. The world might split into two digital futures, one open and distributed, the other tightly controlled and monitored. Internet resilience in the modern age. So, how do we make the internet more resilient? Experts recommend redundancy, multiple data routes, satellite backups, and localized caches. There's also a growing call to treat internet access as a public utility, a basic right, not a luxury. That would make governments more accountable for keeping it stable and available. What we can learn. The internet isn't just lines of code and fiber optics. It's a living system shaped by people, politics, and power. Understanding its fragility helps us prepare, not just for technical failure, but for what happens when connection is taken from us. The question isn't just can the internet be turned off, but rather, what would push a government or global actor to take such a step? Cybersecurity threats and global conflicts. One of the most likely triggers for a mass shutdown would be a large-scale cyber war. If a country believed its critical infrastructure was under attack, power grids, defense systems, and financial institutions, it might choose to isolate itself from the web. Shutting down internet access, even temporarily, could act as a defensive barrier against malware or foreign surveillance. But doing so would be like amputating a limb to stop an infection. It might protect you in the short term, but at a massive cost. Corporate power and the backbone of the web. Let's not forget the key role private corporations play in keeping the internet running. Amazon Web Services, Google Cloud, and Microsoft Azure, a few companies that host much of the world's data and services. If one of them were to fail or be compromised, massive swaths of the internet could disappear, even without a formal shutdown. Even social media outages caused by internal misconfigurations have shown us how vulnerable centralized systems can be. Satellite internet, a backup or a risk. Technologies like Starlink offer global internet through satellite constellations. These systems promise to bypass traditional telecoms and governments, but they also raise questions: who controls them? Can they be targeted in warfare? What happens if governments demand satellite providers shut down regions? We often think of the internet as untouchable, but these examples prove otherwise. It's not invincible, it's a web of real, physical systems with weaknesses that can be exploited. Philosophical shift. More than the technology, a complete internet shutdown would change how humanity perceives connection, how much of our identity is online. Our photos, conversations, jobs, and bank accounts. Could we go back to an analog life? Would we reinvent new methods of connection? Or will we splinter into isolated communities, each with its own offline reality? What comes next? While a total internet shutdown remains unlikely, smaller regional disruptions are increasing, each one a reminder of how dependent we are on connectivity. As individuals, we can't control global cables or satellite systems, but we can be more aware, understanding how the internet works, who controls it, and how we can stay connected even when the lights go out. The internet has revolutionized the world, but like any powerful tool, it must be protected, understood, and questioned. Only then can we ensure that it remains a force for connection, not control. And while the internet may feel like an endless, untouchable force, let's not forget it's built by us, for us. But what happens if those in power begin to reshape that access for their own agendas? The role of digital authoritarianism. In recent years, we've witnessed the rise of digital authoritarianism. Countries have developed sophisticated tools not just to shut down the internet, but to censor, surveil, and manipulate online narratives. From deep packet inspection to AI-powered content moderation, these tools allow governments to decide who gets to speak and who gets silenced. In many ways, this is even more dangerous than an outright shutdown. Why? Because instead of cutting you off, it controls what you see and believe while you're still online. Economic domino effect of a shutdown. A full internet blackout doesn't just affect communication, it brings the economy to its knees. Markets collapse, global transactions freeze, and businesses relying on cloud-based systems grind to a halt. Logistics, supply chains, and international banking all rely on stable and open access to the internet. The 2021 internet shutdown in Myanmar cost the country over $2.5 billion in just a few months. Now imagine that scale to a global level. Impact on education and health. Millions of students depend on digital platforms for learning. Hospitals use internet-based systems to access patient data, coordinate with specialists, and monitor critical cases remotely. An internet blackout isn't just inconvenient, it could be life-threatening. The deeper you dig, the more you realize the internet isn't just one part of our lives, it's the backbone of how the modern world functions. Can we protect it? Technologists around the world are working on decentralized networks, systems that don't rely on centralized ISPs or government infrastructure. Tools like mesh networks, blockchain-based DNS, and peer-to-peer communication systems aim to build a web that's harder to shut down and more democratic in nature. But these systems are still in their infancy, and their mass adoption will take time. At the end of the day, the question isn't just can the internet be turned off, but should it ever be turned off, and who gets to decide? When access to information becomes a privilege instead of a right, society starts to fracture. The internet, in all its complexity and power, must remain a shared resource, a place of innovation, freedom, and connection, not control, manipulation, or fear. And that leads us to a critical question: who really owns the internet? We often speak of the internet like it's a single global entity, but it's actually a network of networks. It's not owned by one person, the government, or a corporation. It's a collaboration of stakeholders, tech companies, international organizations, private infrastructure providers, and governing bodies like ICANN and EIF, the illusion of decentralization. While the structure is technically decentralized, access and control often lie in the hands of a few major players. Think about the undersea fiber optic cables, the backbone of global connectivity. These are owned and operated mostly by private telecom companies and tech giants like Google, Facebook, and Amazon. If a few of these companies chose or were forced to cut access, large portions of the world could be effectively disconnected. Centralized gatekeepers. Now consider DNS, domain name system, the phone book of the internet. If key DNS servers are blocked or hijacked, entire countries could be restricted from accessing major websites, even if they're still connected to the internet. It's a reminder that while the technology may be open, the infrastructure often isn't. Satellite internet, a new frontier? Some believe the solution lies in satellite internet, like Elon Musk's Starlink. These low Earth orbit satellites bypass traditional cables and towers, offering high-speed internet from space. In war zones and crisis regions, Starlink has proven vital, keeping people connected when everything else failed. But again, this brings up another control issue. If access to these services can be remotely granted or revoked by private corporations, is it truly free? When a single tweet can potentially disconnect an entire region, it's a sign that power over the internet is increasingly centralized, even when it looks decentralized on the surface. The role of governments and laws in many democratic nations, laws exist to protect internet freedom. However, even there, emergency powers can override such protections during national crises. Laws like the U.S. Communications Act or the UK's Investigatory Powers Act give governments the ability to intervene in communication systems, including the internet, when national security is at stake. But how those powers are used and who holds them accountable varies greatly. So where does that leave us? We're in an era where access to the internet is vital for exercising free speech, accessing education, receiving healthcare, and even earning a living. The idea of turning off the internet may sound dystopian, but the infrastructure and legal means to do so already exist, and they've been used. This raises a powerful point. If we don't actively work to protect digital rights, the future of internet freedom could look very different than what we know today. Let's now look at some real-world examples where governments have actually shut down or restricted internet access and what that means for the rest of us. India. India has had the highest number of internet shutdowns in the world over the past few years. The government often cites national security, public safety, or curbing misinformation as reasons. Entire states like Jammu and Kashmir have experienced total blackouts lasting months, cutting off millions of people from education, work, and communication. Africa. Several African countries, including Ethiopia, Sudan, and Uganda, have enforced nationwide shutdowns, especially during elections or civil unrest. The intent: control the narrative, block dissent, and prevent information from spreading internationally. These shutdowns don't just affect protesters or activists. They disrupt daily life. Mobile banking, hospital communication, education, and businesses all come to a halt. Economic fallout. A report by Top 10 VPN estimated that internet shutdowns cost the global economy over $20 billion in 2022 alone. That's not just a number, it's millions of lives disrupted. Tech startups, freelancers, digital marketing companies, and remote workers all rely on stable internet access. For them, even a few hours offline can mean missed deals, lost income, and broken trust. Censorship through control. In some countries, the internet isn't completely shut off, but filtered. Governments use firewalls and blacklists to block specific websites, apps, and even search terms. The Great Firewall of China is one of the most sophisticated examples of this. Platforms like YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and even Google search are inaccessible without VPNs. The government controls what citizens can see, hear, and share, the tools of control. To make these shutdowns and restrictions possible, governments often rely on tools provided by private tech firms. These include deep packet inspection software, surveillance systems, and real-time monitoring tools. While some of these are used for legitimate cybersecurity purposes, they can also be exploited for political suppression. This dynamic between tech providers and authoritarian governments raises serious ethical concerns. Should companies be held accountable for helping regimes restrict access to information? The impact on democracy and open internet supports democracy. It gives people a voice, spreads ideas, and connects cultures. When governments control or cut access, it weakens civil society and silences opposition. These are not just isolated incidents. They represent a growing trend across the globe, a warning sign that internet freedom is fragile even in the digital age. Let's explore the technical side of how governments and institutions actually enforce these shutdowns, centralized infrastructure. In many countries, internet traffic flows through a small number of government-controlled internet exchange points (ICPs). This makes it easier for authorities to issue kill switch commands or filter traffic at the source. Think of it as shutting down the main water valve of a building rather than turning off taps in every room. Methods of shutdown. There are several common methods. DNS tampering, disabling access by altering domain name system records so websites simply won't load. IP blocking, preventing access to certain addresses, cutting off social media or news platforms. Throttling, slowing internet speed to unusable levels, often disguised as technical issues. Mobile network blackouts, shutting down 3G, 4G, 5G towers, disabling mobile data in entire regions. Cable disconnections. In extreme cases, physical fiber optic cables are severed to halt connectivity entirely. Deep packet inspection (DPI). Some governments use DPI to analyze and block specific kinds of traffic, say encrypted VPN connections or video streaming services. This level of surveillance enables fine-grained control over what people can and cannot access. Kill switch feasibility. Technically speaking, yes, a country can flip an internet kill switch if it controls or has access to critical infrastructure, but this level of control is not universal. In nations with decentralized or privatized ISPs, it's far more difficult. For example, the United States has a complex web of over 7,000 ISPs, making a national shutdown virtually impossible without major coordination or legislation, limitations, and pushback. In democratic societies, internet shutdowns face legal, political, and societal resistance. Courts often rule them unconstitutional. Public backlash and international pressure also play a role in keeping such actions in check. But even so, partial shutdowns like social media bans or targeted blocks are becoming more common during elections or mass protests. Even in free nations, the global trend. More than 70 countries have implemented some form of internet control in the last decade. This trend is growing, and it's not just authoritarian regimes leading the charge. Surveillance laws, disinformation controls, and national cybersecurity strategies are being used, sometimes subtly, to justify digital restrictions. While the motives may vary, the outcome is often the same: less access, less freedom. Understanding the technical backbone of these shutdowns shows us that the internet's openness is not guaranteed. It depends on the policies, intentions, and structures of those who manage its flow. And that brings us to an even deeper question. Can we build a more resilient internet that resists control? So far, we've seen that while the internet can technically be shut down in certain places, the structure of the web isn't equally vulnerable everywhere. But what would it take to make the internet more resilient, stronger, more decentralized, and resistant to control? Enter the decentralized web. Also known as Web 3.0 or the DWEB, this new approach to internet infrastructure is based on decentralization. That means no single point of control, no central server, and no government-controlled choke point. Think of it like this: instead of one massive bookshelf owned by one library, imagine millions of personal libraries that share, duplicate, and host the same books. If one goes down, the rest keep running. How it works. Technologies like IPFS interplanetary file system aim to host content across multiple nodes. Rather than accessing a file from a single server, you retrieve it from many devices around the world simultaneously. If one goes offline, others fill the gap. Blockchain-based platforms like Ethereum aim to do the same for applications hosting websites and services on a distributed ledger, not on a centralized server. This can make it extremely difficult for any authority to shut down a service. Mesh networks. Another solution is the development of mesh networks, local networks that function independently of traditional internet service providers. Devices connect directly with one another using Wi-Fi or Bluetooth, forming an autonomous web that doesn't rely on big ISPs or cellular towers. These have already been tested in disaster zones and protest areas where traditional access has been restricted. The concept proves that connectivity can persist even when the official website is down. Satellite internet. Projects like Starlink by SpaceX are changing the equation by offering internet access from low Earth orbit satellites, bypassing terrestrial infrastructure. In theory, satellite-based internet can keep people connected even during government-imposed blackouts, assuming the hardware isn't seized or blocked locally, but even this comes with complications. Governments could still regulate or restrict the import and use of such devices. Satellite signals may also be jammed with enough effort. Resilience vs. control. All these technologies show promise, but they also raise complex questions. As we move toward decentralization, who takes responsibility for harmful content or illegal activity? How do we balance freedom with accountability? Some argue that a decentralized web will create chaos, while others see it as the future of digital democracy, where no single entity has control over what we see, say, or do online. In the end, the direction we move toward depends not just on technology, but on public awareness, political will, and collective values. The internet of the future is not just about speed or bandwidth, it's about freedom, resilience, and access for all. As we've seen, the internet was built to connect us, to bring people together, and to share knowledge freely. But over time, it's become a place of walls and barriers where some voices are louder than others, and some aren't even allowed to speak. Surveillance and censorship. In many parts of the world, governments use the internet not as a tool for freedom, but as a tool for control. They monitor what people say, block websites, delete posts, and sometimes arrest those who speak out. Countries like China, Iran, North Korea, and others have tight control over what their citizens can access online. Firewalls block information, social media is filtered. Even private conversations aren't really private. People have lost jobs, or worse, for simply expressing their opinions online. Imagine living in fear every time you post, comment, or even just read the news. But it's not just governments. Big tech companies also play a role. They collect huge amounts of our personal data, including what we search, what we like, and even where we go. That data gets sold, shared, or used to target us with ads or misinformation. The algorithm's grip, and then there's the algorithm. It decides what we see, what we don't, and often it does it based on what keeps us scrolling, not what's true or fair. This means that lies spread faster than facts, hate travels farther than hope. And the more time we spend online, the more these systems learn how to push our buttons. It's no wonder people feel overwhelmed, angry, and divided. The internet, once a symbol of connection, is now being used to tear people apart. The digital divide, and let's not forget, not everyone is even online. Billions of people around the world still don't have regular internet access. That's not just inconvenient, it's a major barrier to education, work, healthcare, and human rights. The digital divide is real, and it's growing, a fork in the road. So, where do we go from here? We're at a turning point. The internet can continue down the path of control, censorship, and inequality, or it can return to its roots, a tool for freedom, learning, and global connection. More and more people are standing up, whistleblowers exposing surveillance, developers are building privacy-focused tools, activists demanding digital rights, and everyday users, just like you, are starting to ask, who controls the internet, and what kind of internet do we want? This isn't just a tech issue, it's a human one. Because the fight for the future of the internet is really a fight for our future. And that's exactly why people around the world are stepping up, trying to rebuild the internet into something better, more secure, more open, more human. This isn't just about coding or cables, it's a fight for freedom, fairness, and connection. Is the internet a basic human right? Think about it. In today's world, the internet isn't just a luxury. It's how we go to school, find jobs, see a doctor, and even stay in touch with family. That's why so many believe internet access should be a basic human right. The United Nations agrees. They've said that cutting someone off from the internet is a violation of their rights. It's that important, but it's not just about being online. It's about making sure everyone, no matter where they live or how much they earn, can join the digital world equally. The power of community networks. So what happens when governments or big companies won't provide access? People build it themselves. In villages across India, hillsides of Argentina, remote parts of Africa, and even rural towns in the US, people are creating community networks. They're setting up their own internet using radio signals, solar power, and creative tech to bring affordable, reliable connections to their neighborhoods. It's not just cool, it's empowering. These networks are owned by the people, not by some massive telecom company. That means no hidden FEs, no censorship, just real access, run by locals for locals, taking back our privacy. But having internet access is only half the story, the other half, protecting our privacy. Let's face it, most of our online lives are tracked. Everything we click, like or buy, gets logged, stored, and sometimes even sold. That's why more and more people are turning to privacy-first tools like DuckDuckGo, Tor, and encrypted messaging apps. Some are exploring decentralized web technologies where there's no single company in charge. Take IPFS, a system that stores files all over the world instead of in one place. That means no one can delete your content or block your voice. It's a way to make sure the internet stays free, no matter who's in charge. Open source, open future. And here's something incredible. A lot of these tools are built using open source software. That means the code is public, editable, and belongs to everyone, not locked behind a corporate wall. From secure browsers to blockchain to messaging apps, open source tech is powering a new kind of web, one that values collaboration over control. In the end, the internet was never supposed to be about control. It was about freedom, connection, and possibility. And even now, people all around the world are making sure it stays that way. One network, one line of code, and one act of resistance at a time. And while the fight for a better internet is growing, it's also becoming more complex. New technologies like artificial intelligence, deepfakes, and blockchain are adding fresh layers to the digital landscape, offering both hope and risk. Artificial intelligence, a double-edged sword. AI can help us solve problems faster, personalize experiences, and even improve healthcare. But it can also be used to spread misinformation, manipulate public opinion, and automate surveillance. Who decides how AI is used? Who holds the power? Right now, it's often in the hands of a few large corporations and governments, most of them far removed from the people whose decisions they affect. Deepfakes and the death of truth. Deepfakes, videos and audio that make people appear to say or do things they never did, are blurring the line between real and fake. It's getting harder to know what to trust. When truth becomes slippery, democracy and trust in each other begin to crumble. People can be framed, reputations destroyed, and elections influenced, all with a convincing fake video. Decentralized tech, the hope and the hype. Then there's blockchain and Web3, technologies that promise to decentralize the internet, giving control back to users. The idea sounds amazing, no single company or government running the show, but reality isn't so simple. Scams, rug pulls, and environmental concerns have raised valid questions. The dream is still alive, but it needs transparency, regulation, and accountability to truly serve people, not just profit. The next generation is watching. All of this is shaping the world our children will inherit. They are growing up online, learning, playing, and making friends. But they're also being targeted by ads, tracked without consent, and exposed to harmful content. Do they get a say in what kind of internet they grow up with? The power of choice at the heart of it all is choice. As users, developers, educators, and citizens, we all have a role to play. The internet isn't something that just happens to us. It's something we help build every time we click, share, or code. We need more voices at the table, more ethics in the design room, more responsibility from tech giants, and more digital literacy for everyone. This moment, right now, is shaping the next era of the internet. We can build a space that's more honest, more inclusive, and more human. But only if we're willing to ask hard questions, demand better answers, and keep pushing forward together. But change doesn't just come from the top. It often starts with small actions, people coming together, speaking out, and pushing for a better digital future. Grassroots movements people power. Across the world, activists and everyday users are demanding transparency, pushing back against surveillance, and advocating for digital rights. From campaigns for net neutrality to protests against censorship, these efforts show that people can make a difference even when facing powerful forces. In India, millions rallied to protect net neutrality. In Brazil, communities built their own internet networks. In Kenya, activists challenged unlawful biometric data collection. These stories reveal a common thread. When people organize, the internet listens. The fight for digital rights are human rights. The right to privacy, to express yourself freely, to access knowledge without barriers. These are essential in today's world, yet they're under threat every day. Authoritarian regimes are using technology to control populations. Companies are profiting off surveillance. Algorithms are reinforcing discrimination. It's not enough to be aware. We must act. What role do platforms play? Social media platforms have become the new public squares. But they're run by private companies, often driven by engagement and profit, not truth or well-being. Their algorithms shape what billions see and believe. Their policies decide who gets silenced and who gets amplified. Are they truly neutral? Or are they shaping the world to suit their business model? The question of accountability. When harm happens, when false news spreads, when hate speech incites violence, who is held accountable? Often, no one. Platforms deflect responsibility, governments pass vague laws, and users are left with the consequences. We need systems that don't just react to harm, but prevent it. That means designing platforms with ethics, not just efficiency, in mind, toward a better web. The internet was meant to connect us, to democratize knowledge, to break down borders. We still have the chance to make that vision real, but it won't happen by default. It will take effort, awareness, and cooperation. Every click matters, every voice counts. The internet reflects us, our values, our choices, and our hopes. If we want it to be better, we have to be better too. And while the internet's evolution continues, one thing remains clear: we are all participants in shaping its direction. Digital inequality, a growing divide. Access to the internet is still a privilege, not a right, for billions. While urban centers enjoy lightning-fast connectivity, rural and underdeveloped regions are often left behind. This divide affects education, employment, healthcare, and civic participation. Digital inequality is not just about infrastructure, it's also about skills. Even with access, many lack the knowledge to use the internet safely or productively. Without digital literacy, users become vulnerable to scams, misinformation, and exploitation. Education in a digital age. Online learning platforms, virtual classrooms, and educational apps are reshaping how people learn. Yet, these tools work best when paired with access and understanding. During the pandemic, millions of students were cut off from education simply because they didn't have internet or devices. This stark reality calls for investment in not only technology but also in people, training teachers, empowering students, and creating inclusive learning environments that reach beyond economic or geographic limitations. The rise of artificial intelligence (AI) is rapidly becoming part of our everyday lives, recommending what we watch, filtering our emails, scanning job applications, and even diagnosing medical conditions. But AI also inherits human bias. If the data is flawed, the decisions can be discriminatory or harmful. Transparency in AI development is crucial. We must ask, who builds these systems? What are their goals? And how do we ensure fairness, especially when decisions affect people's rights or opportunities? The fragility of truth. In a world flooded with information, distinguishing truth from fiction has never been harder or more important. Deepfakes, AI-generated content, and coordinated misinformation campaigns are eroding trust in news, institutions, and even each other. Fact-checking and digital media literacy are no longer optional. They're necessary tools for navigating modern life, but platforms, too, must be held to higher standards, designing systems that prioritize truth and accountability over engagement and virality. Sustainability and the digital world. The internet feels intangible, but it has a real-world footprint. Massive data centers, streaming services, and cryptocurrency mining, they all consume enormous energy. As we embrace digital tools, we must also consider their environmental impact. Green computing, efficient algorithms, and eco-conscious design aren't just buzzwords. They are vital to ensuring the future of both the internet and the planet. Yet, amid this digital revolution, another dimension demands our attention: the psychological impact of online life, mental health, and the internet. The internet connects us, but it also isolates us. Social media, while offering a platform for expression, can create unrealistic standards, fuel anxiety, and contribute to depression, especially among young users. The constant comparison, the pressure to be liked, and the fear of missing out often take a silent toll. Algorithms are designed to keep us scrolling, often exposing us to polarizing or distressing content. Doom scrolling, consuming endless negative news, can increase stress levels and make the world seem darker than it really is. Balancing screen time, curating what we see, and engaging in digital detoxes are vital steps for maintaining mental well-being. But individuals alone can't carry the burden. Tech companies must design more humane platforms that encourage healthy habits, surveillance, and loss of privacy. Each click, like, and share leaves a digital footprint. Our movements, purchases, messages, and even private thoughts are captured through devices and stored in massive databases. We're told it's for personalization, but at what cost? Mass surveillance by corporations and governments raises critical concerns. Consent becomes meaningless when data collection is buried in fine print or enforced by default. The internet, once a symbol of freedom, now risks becoming a tool of control, decentralization taking back control. The centralized power of a few tech giants has led to growing concerns. They influence what we see, buy, believe, and even how we vote. That's why movements toward decentralization are gaining momentum. Technologies like blockchain, peer-to-peer networking, and open source development challenge centralized systems. They offer users more control, transparency, and ownership over their data and interactions. However, these systems are complex and not without challenges of their own. The digital self-avatars and identity our online personas often differ from our real selves. Some craft curated identities, others create entirely fictional ones. As we enter spaces like the metaverse, the line between digital and physical identity blurs further. This opens powerful opportunities for creativity and expression, but also questions about authenticity, consent, and safety. Who are we really when our identity can be changed with a click? Navigating the future? The internet is not a fixed structure, it's a living, evolving ecosystem. Its future depends on decisions made today by users, developers, educators, policymakers, and communities. We are no longer just consumers, we are co-creators of the digital age. And as we continue deeper into their world, what becomes clear is that these ancient people weren't just surviving. They were thriving through innovation, meaning, and deep social bonds. In a society without modern tools, what they achieved was nothing short of extraordinary. Their cities, their customs, their beliefs, everything reflected a well-organized way of life rooted in observation and understanding. The alignment of their settlements with celestial movements reveals not only astronomical knowledge but also a respect for cycles, both natural and spiritual. These alignments weren't just about the stars, they were about order, prediction, and preparation. Harvests, ceremonies, and even daily routines were guided by these observations, suggesting a seamless blend of science and spirituality. Trade, too, played a critical role in their lives. Goods from far regions, beads, metals, and rare stones have been found in their cities, pointing to long-distance networks and cultural exchange. These weren't isolated people, they were part of a much larger world, curious and engaged. Bartering was more than an economic activity, it was communication across communities and cultures. The ruins also show signs of conflict and adaptation. Walls rebuilt, homes restructured, and public spaces repurposed all tell the story of a people who responded to challenges, not with retreat, but with reinvention. Even in the face of environmental shifts, societal changes, or external threats, they showed resilience. Their ruins are not just signs of decay, they're records of growth, adjustment, and persistence. Art played a subtle but important role. Whether carved into pottery, painted onto surfaces, or embedded in jewelry, it wasn't just decorative, it was expressive. It told stories of seasons, relationships, protection, and belief. Some symbols repeat across locations, hinting at shared values or perhaps spiritual unity. These visuals formed a language of their own, one we are still learning to translate. What's especially remarkable is how their legacy wasn't preserved in grand declarations or written records, but in the ordinary. The remnants of kitchens, wells, toys, tools, and textiles speak louder than royal proclamations. They whisper truths about real people, their joys, their struggles, and their routines. Children played where we now walk, and laughter once echoed where silence reigns today. These were not distant, mythic beings. They were people with dreams, fears, and hopes like ours. And through their remnants, we find a mirror into the human experience, one that transcends time. As we step through their world, we're not just observers. We're participants in an ongoing journey to understand where we come from and who we are. Every discovery, no matter how small, adds another piece to the puzzle. It's not just about the past, it's about the continuous thread of humanity that binds us all.